Welcome to the Speaker Meeting, a space where we break the silence one story at a time. Every episode, you'll hear from someone who's been there, through the struggle of addiction, the turning point into recovery, and the journey after. Because no matter where you are, you're not alone. Recovery is possible, and hope is real. My hope is that by sharing these stories, you'll believe it to be true. My name is Chibi. My sobriety date is April 5th, 2024, and this is the Speaker Meeting.
Awesome. My name is Justin H., and my sobriety date is February 22nd of 2021.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Justin. I'm excited to dive into your story. We have a tradition on this podcast where we start with the guest pulling a random tarot card and use it as a kind of guiding energy for the conversation. And the card that you pulled is the Six of Pentacles. And this card is about both giving and receiving. It's about support, time, love, and resources, and learning how to do both with grace. It asks us to reflect on balance, where we've been the one in need and where we've been showing up for others. And then recovery often shows up as a reminder that mutual support is kind of how we heal. Like, none of us do this alone, right? So has there ever been a moment in your recovery where you realized how much you needed others, or how much someone needs to you, or how does this idea of like giving and receiving and that relationship of support resonate with you?
Damn.
I know these cards.
Yes.
Every time.
I've only ever had my cards just like read twice.
Okay.
And so when this stuff happens, you're like, there's definitely an energy in the universe that is putting stuff in your life.
Yeah.
And that's recovery for me. Because today, fast forward 4 years, 4 months into my recovery, I get to be the executive director of the Thrive Youth Center, which is an LGBTQ youth homeless shelter. And the amount of youth that come through that have addiction and substance abuse challenges or mental health challenges, I get to know how to handle these issues because of my recovery journey. Getting sober or going to rehab over 5 years ago, and going through that whole experience of using substances to cover up insecurities, emotions, everything that we as addicts and alcoholics feel, that I get to use that experience in the journey of being able to help others today. And it is so, there's so much gratitude in that. So it's pretty incredible that's the card that got pulled.
I'm telling you.
All just by dipping into a deck of cards.
Yeah, completely random. And to dive into the card like a little bit more, the way that this one's depicted is a kind of like grandfather clock, right? With the little pendulum swinging back and forth. And it's, to me, that really symbolizes the notion of like we give and we receive, and it takes that pendulum going both ways for the clock, or in this case, us, our soul, to work, right? And it's so rooted, I think, in 12-step programs, right? The giving back, it's in the fucking book, like, we give so free, we give to others what has been so freely given to us.
It's when we get to step 12 and we have to start giving it so that we can keep it. Because if we don't keep giving it, it's going to be taken away. Whether we believe it or not, it's going to go away.
And I love that, like, you're now in this role where you get to give to some of the most vulnerable of our society, really. LGBTQ youth are usually some of the most at risk for mental health issues, for substance abuse issues, homelessness, all of that. So
and they at 18 and 19 don't know how to deal with it. And you can expect that. I was 47 and didn't know how to deal with it. So I'm like, oh shit. Now we can give back to hopefully stop them from having to go through the same crap that I had to experience in my late 40s instead of when you're 17, 18, or 19.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember where I heard this, and I don't know how true it is, but I heard once that, like, when you start drinking or using, like, your mental development kind of stops, right? And so, like, for me, that stopped at like 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
So my 38-year-old self was like, emotionally, I'm a fucking 14-year-old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they say like it takes up to like you're 26, you're still developing, and then you're pretty much cooked. Like that's your brain is where it needs to be. Like, but my journey to like substance abuse didn't happen until I was in my late 30s.
Okay.
Because I literally didn't accept myself for who I was until I was in my 30s.
Gotcha.
So I lived that life of going to college, running away from home in terms of I didn't want anybody to know that I was gay. And then hid all of that by putting myself into work. So by the time I was 27, I was a vice president of a company. I, was on this ladder to be successful, or what I thought was success.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to San Antonio, it was about 2001, and I was just turning 30, and like I was starting to explore myself as a gay man, and really started to accept who I was. And then it took another several years, and being introduced into the gay community, one of the avenues is substance use, right? I would drink, but not to the extreme, but then got introduced to crystal meth. And it was like, like, this is how you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
But then it's good until it's not good anymore.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth. Like I got into a long-term relationship and ended up like being in that relationship for 8 years, never really used, drank every once in a while. But then when that relationship ended, it was I instantly went to let me hook up and let me, get back to using. And then it just became so regular. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, I can't stop. And then you realize you can't do it on your own. Yeah. And it took literally people that loved me to sit down with me and say, get out of here. Yeah. Go get the help that you need. Yeah. And some of those people aren't in my life anymore because they don't want me back because of the screw ups that I made. But that drives me today to be a better person. And so, I went off to rehab and spent 30 days in a treatment facility, to be able to get sober. Yeah. Cause I had to be taken out of that environment. But then was introduced to 12-step, but then didn't really take it up. Like I'd get 3 months sober and I'd use again. I'd get 6 months sober and use again. And then when that freeze happened in 2021, I did like a 4-day bender. And then I was like, do I really want to keep doing this? Yeah. And picked up the phone and called somebody who I knew was in recovery, and who was my sponsor today, still 4.5 years later. And they were like, do you really want to get sober? And I was ready. Yeah. And just got rid of all that bullshit and started admitting to myself my character defects, my flaws, understanding what I was doing was wrong. Yeah. And wasn't on, I had to reach that deep, dark place. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, like I didn't like what I saw. Yeah. And so today it's a little different.
Well, that's the whole episode. Yep. Thank you. No, it's interesting too that you say how before the substance use even came into your life, right? You threw yourself into work, yep. and that itself is an addiction, yeah, and a form of addictive behavior. I'm wondering if throughout that time when you were throwing yourself into work, or even as your drinking and substance use started to progress, were you ever cognizant of like, oh, I'm substituting, I'm masking, I'm replacing, I am avoiding?
Yes. Yeah, even when I made the decision when I left Wisconsin after graduating from college, it was like I had to get away from family and friends that were probably starting to wonder, is Justin gay? But would never ever say it. Or if they did say it, I would be like, oh no, there's no way that's me. Yeah. And so you're dealing with all those internal emotions and feelings that you don't recognize, or you do recognize them, but you're so scared. And that's that internal fear, right? Like most of us that either came out late in life, or we had social norms that caused us to be so fearful to tell somebody that we loved who we are. And today it's getting worse. And so, yeah, I recognize that very quickly. And it was easy to throw yourself into work because then you have this euphoria of success.
Yeah.
You have this euphoria of, oh, I'm 27 years old and I'm a VP of a company. Like I'm making bucks. I'm driving a Mercedes. I could enjoy life. But I wasn't being me.
And especially for men, it's so socially acceptable.
Yes. Yeah. Until it's not anymore. then you're then you're sitting back and realizing that you're not being your true self. And then when you finally start to learn the tools and the resources to start living your authentic self, and for me, that was at 47 years old, recognizing sitting across from a counselor at a rehab facility, and having realized all the trauma that I had in my life, around self-caused trauma, putting myself into situations that I didn't have to be in, but I didn't know how to deal with it. And that's to no one's fault. I think my family was very much like, what do you mean you're an addict? Like they never saw it because I moved away and they didn't see all of this, until I isolated. And they're like, well, where is he at? What's he doing? And then they get the call that says, oh, he's sitting in a rehab.
Yeah.
So,
and you said that you started with just, casually drinking of sorts, and then kind of crystal was introduced.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, it feels like such a huge jump, right? Or to a lot of people, it might feel that way, but because that drug is so pervasive in the gay community, right? I imagine it was just. Was it just like a casual, like, oh, and by the way, here's some crystal. Do you want some?
No. Like when I started dating, I didn't know what ecstasy was. I didn't know what circuit parties were. I didn't know any of that. And I was 30 years old. So this person I dated introduced me to a scene of individuals that we went to like gay days at Disney. And I went and I was like, well, this should be interesting. Like all these gay folks, like going to Disney World. And then we ended up doing the circuit parties. And I was like, what is this? And then tried ecstasy and the basic party drugs that are out there. And then I ended up with somebody, and he introduced me to it. And he's like, hey, try this. It was very innocent, like, well, I'll try anything to be accepted, right?
Yeah.
We lower those barriers. And then it gave me a real sense of like security and sense of being who I could be. And it was all false because that's what this drug does to you. It changes the way you think or feel and makes you not be able to recognize the difference between right and wrong. So innocently that you're like, this is like smoking weed or smoking anything else. And then it literally causes you to make decisions that you would never make on your own. And this happens, I think, it happens more to individuals that are successful. So when you see people that like just want to escape, they're like, oh, let me do something to escape these emotions. And then your body, if you truly are an addict, gets addicted to it. And then you're sitting there going, how am I going to stop? And so to me, I took a break for like 8 or 9 years in that relationship where I didn't use. I drank, but it didn't drink excessively. And then it was like, you could go back to it because like, I'm free. I get to go have fun. And then it got to the point like 2 years into it that when you realize you can't stop. And I took a trip to Atlanta to see some friends, and I knew I had a problem, but didn't. And I owned a couple businesses, and I actually ran for city council. And that was all during my addiction. And people just thought, oh, you have so much energy. If they only knew. Well, now they do. But
yeah.
Like you just sit back and people need to know that, because I think where we sit and judge so hardly on people that they're out there and they see that they think everything's fine and it's not. And we have to do much better as a society to recognize when somebody's really hurting.
Yeah.
And for me, it was huge insecurity and wanting to be part of something bigger than myself and wanting to make a difference in the world. But ended up going down the wrong path of darkness instead of like truly being able to use that to help people.
Yeah.
And I think that piece of it is the regret. Because, you know, I did what I did, but I get to correct it today. I get to live a better life and not have to worry about, like that I'm not making the right decisions, because I know I'm making the right decisions today.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that like there were people in your life that kind of said, you're going to rehab, right?
Yep.
You know, to touch on the point of like, you know, we need to recognize when things aren't wrong with other people. Can you talk a little bit about like what kind of like led up to that or how that happened? Because I think for a lot of people, I know for myself, like when I was in the worst of my addiction, I just didn't know how to get out.
Yep.
I had no idea how to get out. And I knew I wanted to stop. And once I did, I was like, great. But I just didn't know how to take that kind of like first step to stop.
Yeah, so it was in October of 2019. It's from May of 2019 down to October. It was like a deep dive. Like I'd have to use every day just to wake up or just to get going. And in October that year, it was going to be Atlanta Pride. And I was like, oh, let me go to Atlanta and visit my friends. And I'm like, if I can just not use when I get there, not take anything with me, if I can not use when I get there, I can kick this. Like I don't need help. Because there's people within the community that you're using with or whatever, like, you can't stop this. It's in you now. You can't stop. Of course, those are your dealers and everybody else trying to make money off of you. And literally, like, so I went, and within 24 hours, I was able to score. And so when I got back, I continued to function and making those stupid decisions, right? Taking things that weren't mine, like, you know, all that stuff, hurting people that I loved. And my business partner literally sat across from me and realized what I was doing, and was pushing me because he knew something was wrong, but he didn't know the depth of what it was. And then ended up sitting across from me and said, get out of the business. I don't want you as part of this anymore. And literally locked me out of our offices.
Wow.
And ended up a friend of mine who was in the not recovery area, but was a counselor. And so I called her and said, hey, I have a problem. And she looked at a picture of me on Facebook and said, you're addicted to meth, aren't you? And I go, yes. She was at my house the next morning and gave me a list of 3 facilities and said, you have to go to one of these 3 facilities. Wow. And I was like, what do you mean? Isn't there an adult daycare I can go to? Like, can't you just lock me up for the day? Yeah. And I was like, no, like, she's like, no, you have to get this out of your system. Like, you're going to have to go away for 30 days. And that's when I had to make arrangements for my dogs and, you know, all that stuff. And she and her family just like took care of it all and then sent me off. And that's when I started to like learn why I did what I did, the consequences of what I did, the people that I hurt, and start that process of recovery. And it's still going on today. I still don't have a relationship with my business partner, although we still own a business together. Like, I don't have anything to do with it because he doesn't want me around. Yeah. And I get that. Like, I'm very regretful of those actions that I took, that happened to me, and that I take responsibility for those things. But I don't get to control what other people think, say, or do. All I can do is control what I do today. Yeah. And, I don't have to live that life anymore. Yeah. And so that piece of it means I get to live a better life today.
For sure. Now, you did say that like you went to rehab, but then, as someone in our community sometimes says, you You wanted to fuck around and find out.
Yes.
Afterwards,
a little more research.
And I think, like it's important to acknowledge that. And I want you to talk a little bit more about like what was going on during those years, because for so many people, they feel like, oh, I relapsed. I'm a failure. I'm never going to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But relapse is part of a lot of people's recovery. Yeah.
I was going through the whole IOP thing. When you get out of rehab and you're in there for 28 days or 30 days, and then you end up like having to go to these, like your insurance allows you to go for IOP. So you're going 4 nights a week. And you feel you're working the steps, and you get to step 4 and you're trying to make amends. Well, my first relapse was literally, I was driving Uber because I didn't have work anymore.
Yeah.
I literally had nothing, and I was living off of my 401k that I had put money away and trying to maintain life. So I was driving Uber, and one night I was like, man, I still owe my ex-drug dealer $100. I need to make amends.
Except where it would harm you or others.
Forget about that part, right? And literally I go knocking on his door within minutes, right? Because clearly I wasn't connecting spiritually, or wasn't connecting. And that's part of the challenges of addiction, right? Is you're taught something, but your mind doesn't allow you to accept it or realize what's good for you until you really do submit to defeat. So, and even up to those 13 months of relapses, it wasn't until I really hit my rock bottom 13 months later. So it was like 3 or 4 relapses, and they were small in some cases until that last one was just craziness.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I really at this point want to change.
Yeah.
And thank God I had been through the program of recovery so that I had the ability to know who to reach out to.
Okay.
Because I had my good friend who lives in Atlanta, she would talk to me and she's like, there's something wrong. Like, and there's something wrong. And you need to get help. She didn't know I relapsed, didn't know all that kind of stuff, but just knew that there was still some depression or whatever in my life, and was encouraging me to go and reach out for that help. And then I finally just did it.
Yeah.
And thank God that my sponsor picked up the phone and said, get your shit together.
During those 13 months, were you going to meetings? Did you have a sponsor?
Yes. Didn't have a sponsor.
Okay.
Didn't do the typical, right? If I go to 90 meetings in 90 days, I'm going to be okay, right? Yeah, no. The meetings are only, what I've really learned in recovery, it has nothing to do with meetings per se of attendance. It's how you work it. And for me, it was all about service. Because having been in the service industry for 25 years, I understand the concept of service, right? Serving others. But yet it was like until I saw how I could be of service to other people in the program, like simple things. When I finally got sober the last time, I picked a home group, which they tell us to do, and get connected.
Yep.
And started to make I don't even drink coffee, but I was making coffee for the meetings, setting up chairs. Then all of a sudden I have the key to the church. I'm like, what the hell are they giving me the key to the church for? But then I realized that's my responsibility. Like, get there early, set up the tables, chairs, make the coffee, and do that connection, get active in recovery. Building relationships so that if you don't show up, somebody's going to call you on your bullshit and say, why aren't you at this meeting? And that home group that I went to right after this last time I got sober is still my home group today. And it's moved, and we serve a lot of people in the community, but yet it was that service that I realized this is how I'm going to stay sober.
Yeah. It goes back to the Six of Pentacles, giving and receiving, right? Like, that's how it works. I was literally in a meeting last night where somebody was sharing that, this isn't their first attempt, but like in the previous attempts, they were just showing up to meetings and thinking that was enough. And they were like, what did it for you? And I was like, getting involved, like plugging in, being part of the community. That's part of the work. Yes, do your 4th step. Yes, make your amends, all of that. But also, and you try
to teach that to sponsees and other people in recovery, that you're like, until you get connected, either in your sober house or sober living, or like even in rehab, like when everything in rehab is designed about connecting you to other people, at least in the rehab that I went to, and because it was 12-step based. But then there's so many avenues of recovery now. that you can get sober in any which way that's out there.
Yeah.
And so that service piece is, today I'm a treasurer for our district and active in like different service levels of recovery, PICPC, all those things to showcase that what we're able to do long term to keep our sobriety.
Yeah. And I'm wondering what changed for you that last time, right? You mentioned you like finally surrendered of sorts. Like what internally, mentally, emotionally like switched for you that allowed you to really like reach out to your sponsor? Because sometimes it's the like picking up that phone feels so heavy, right? It feels so impossible, and then be like really sticking with it.
I think it was the situation around that 4 days of putting myself into situations that I was like, why in the hell am I doing this? And just feeling defeated and recognizing that if I continue this, I will die. Because that's what that drug does to you. It takes away all sense of reality, or it did for me at least. And so I was always pushing the boundaries of everything, and I didn't want to do that anymore because I didn't want to feel that pain. And so I think having been through the 12 steps a couple times, like, and just seeing it in meetings. So that's why I do encourage people to still go to those meetings because you see it and realize it so that you have a base of the education of it. But no matter how much time I spent at rehab or how many times I went to so many meetings, until you just finally accept the fact that you've got to do something better than what you were doing. You have to change something. Yeah. And for me, it was just realizing that I didn't want to feel this way anymore. And I didn't have to. And I'd seen enough people in recovery, like with 10, 20, 30 years, that you're like, if you just do these simple steps, you can do it. But those are the hardest steps when you're freshly into it, right? And so they're the hardest steps to take until you actually realize they're not so hard. Yeah. And 4 years in, it doesn't seem so hard, but looking back on it, it was hard.
Yeah. Well, what were those first months like? You mentioned you reached out to someone who he wasn't your sponsor, but is now. Yeah. Like, how did you know to call him, and then what were those first months like, and really going through it?
So he and I had worked together 15 years before. Okay. And I knew he was in recovery, and he had, I think at that time, like 6-7 years sobriety. And so like, I knew it worked for him, and I respected him enough to know that like, okay, this works for somebody else. And I knew him personally. So that's why I reached out to him. Yeah. And it was at an event that we had exchanged numbers, like most sponsors like end up exchanging numbers at some point. And he had said early on, before I really got sober, here's my number. If you ever need anything, call me. And that just stuck out. Okay. Because it's somebody who I knew. Yeah. And knew well. And so that first couple days is like, he was very like stern. You're going to meet me at this meeting, and you're going to do this, and laid out those steps of true sponsorship. And I was ready and willing to listen to that. And so those simple things, and then just constant communication of picking up the phone, and like the first 30 days, he said, you have to call me every day. I don't want to call him every day. I don't want to talk to you every day. Then I have to actually tell you how I feel. Yeah. And I don't want to do that because I'm not one to typically share my emotions or my feelings. I am now. Yeah. But back then I wasn't. And so, it took me to a lot of events, service events in recovery, retreats, and truly taught me how to connect with other people. Because whatever relationships I had before were surface level relationships. I still battle with that, like how you build deeper relationships with people. Because those are those character defects that still are here in me that I can recognize, but I know how to work with that. Yeah. So developing deeper relationships with people, showing up for people when they need it, because that's ultimately going to help me when I need it.
The pendulum.
Yeah, it keeps going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, and I think what you were talking about earlier too, about like that moment of rock bottom, like the saying is something along the lines of like, nothing will change until the pain of doing something different is less than the pain of staying the same, right? Yep. And it sounds like you were at that point where like, I know it's going to be hard, but whatever it is, it can't be worse than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that like I had a breakthrough recently. I was avoiding something for several years. And
as we do,
because we still have these character defects that are living at us. And it was, I have a career coach that helps me just balance career and life. Mm-hmm. So I have my sponsor, I have a career coach, I have people in my lives to better myself.
Yeah.
And my career coach was really pushing me on something that I was holding back on. And he just kept digging in and digging in and digging in. And I had this aha moment that just do it, like do something about it. And then I did it. And then you feel so great. So then I had to go tell my sponsor. And he was pissed because he's like, I've been telling you to do that for 3 years. And now you're just going to do it because your career coach told you to do it. And it was like, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Sorry. But also take your ego out of it for a second.
This is not about you. This is about me.
Yeah.
So yeah, you start to like see that it takes more than one person.
Yeah.
It's a village of people.
Yeah.
And that's when you build that community and recovery that you start to realize that it's okay. So there's people out there to help you with
Talk a little bit more about that. What does recovery look like for you today? How do you keep moving forward? Like, what are all the pieces in your life that keep you here?
Yep. So, like, my recovery today is attending meetings, being active in my home group. I've served as a GSR in the service structure, active as a treasurer for the district. Connect with a deep group. I do a step study once a month with a group of guys that we get together at different houses every month and make dinner for everybody and really building those relationships. Meet with my sponsor regularly, still stay connected, go to conferences, use a lot of the skills I learned in the service industry for years, planning meetings, planning conferences, and then just working with other potential sponsees, because it's not easy to get sponsees. Yeah. You can raise your hand as much as you want, but until somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I need your help. And I've walked through the steps with several people. And then there's that bruising of ego, right? When that person stops calling you or like they relapse or they just don't call you anymore and they switch the sponsee relationship. Yeah. And so for me, continuing to just offer myself out there. And then in my work, I can take those principles and apply them to my work. So how I deal with the youth in our shelter or deal with our staff at the shelter, just having a compassionate lens, meeting people where they're at, because I'm glad somebody met me where I was at. Yeah. And the youth that we work with on a daily basis, these are youth that got kicked out of their house or ran away because of an abusive relationship or don't have a family to support them. They're living on the streets. They're at their deepest, darkest moment. But yet they still have like emotional, like baggage. They have all this trauma built up, and it takes a village to help these individuals. And it might take you, our shelter is like a triage of people coming off the streets, and they might not open up for the whole time that they're with you, but you have to continue to push them. And that is a daily reminder to me of I have to push myself. When I get lazy, when I come home from work, I still have to get off my chair and go to a meeting or be of service or anything like that. Because if I don't, there's always that risk of going back out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. And I always say, like, I can't guarantee that I never won't, but it sure isn't because of me lack of trying and working these principles or steps that 12-step recovery has taught me.
Yeah. And, that's one of the reasons that I love that it's described as like a program for living, right? Because yes, it keeps me sober, but more than that, it makes me a better person when I actually work it. it's interesting you bring up that idea of like, I still have to go to meetings even if I'm tired. Like I take a meeting out to a rehab once a week, and like this past week, I did not want to go. A bitch was tired. Bitch was real tired. But I still went. And the topic that I brought was like, sometimes you got to do the things you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And in that meeting, somebody was like, I never come to these optional meetings. Something told me to come. I've been thinking of leaving. And I know it's not what I should do, but I want to. But just hearing this, that sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do. Like, I think you might have saved my life right now. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, you kind of saved mine too in that. So again, it's that Six of Pentacles. It's like we give, but in that giving, we also receive so much.
Yeah. So much. Society I think when we talk in recovery, like the spirituality piece of it, like I go to church on Sundays, and I have a neighbor who is 90 years old, who doesn't get out of the house a lot, but I like to take her to church on Sundays. Has nothing to do with recovery. But yet that piece of it, I wouldn't do that if I was still using.
Yeah.
And she's there for me more than I'm there for her. And it's becoming like God is putting that into my life to keep me aware. Mm-hmm. And that little bit of service does more for me than it does for her.
Yeah.
She won't say that. She'll, you're God sent. I'm like, be quiet. I'm supposed to do this. This is my job. But that spiritual piece is so critical in life. And it can be anything. It can be like any spirituality, from like Buddhism to religion, or like it's just
for me,
having
it's
a higher power. Yes, it's the universe. Yes. It's just there's an energy out there that if we realize that we want to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves, that universe can help guide you.
Yeah.
And be there to reward you with just feeling okay.
Yeah.
Early on, my counselor was like, when you're in addiction, you're chasing that 20% of the best highs that you've ever had. Mm-hmm. And yet you're living in the lower 20% because you can never get to that upper 20% once you've had it. Uh-huh. And then, but that like 80% or that 60% in the center that like we avoid, but it's the biggest portion, right? And if we can just live in that 60, like you don't have to like worry about that higher 20 and that lower 20, and you're just living in the middle. Yeah. And it's like an epiphany, but you're like, damn, I'm just happy today. And if I can live this way every day, that's okay.
Yeah. I was going through that hard a few months ago, where I was like, I have to learn to be okay with being okay.
Yes,
it's fine to be, it's great to be okay. You don't always have to be up here.
But society wants us to be there, right? We're always chasing what's better, what's next.
Mm-hmm. That dopamine rush. Yes. And it comes so quickly and easily these days that it's hard.
Because it's instant gratification. Mm-hmm. Like we get on our phone. I try not to get on my phone. I've deleted all the like games and the apps, and I try not to get on Facebook and like hear all the craziness that's going on. But if you can live in today, it's just a better life.
Yeah. And for someone that's just starting out in recovery, like it may seem like a lot, like going to meetings, doing service work, being on the board, doing all that. But like when I think about it, my whole life revolved around drugging and drinking, right? And if I take that out, there's a void to fill. And this just gives the perfect opportunity to fill it with something meaningful and good.
Yeah.
Instead of self-destruction.
Yeah.
And chaos.
No chaos.
We had such a lovely relationship.
Crazy.
Thanks for sharing. Like it sounds like quite a journey, and like clearly you're making an impact in the people that you service, both at work and in recovery.
Yeah.
And obviously, as we talked about, it's mutually beneficial.
Yep.
So I think it's just a really brilliant example and proof of how how these recovery programs work, right?
Yep.
That you really do have to. It's so counterintuitive, the idea of like surrendering to win, giving in order to receive, right? But that paradox is alive and real.
Yep.
So thanks for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
You ready to get into some rapid fire?
I guess. We'll see how rapid I can be.
Exactly. They don't have to be rapid. They absolutely don't have to be rapid. So fill in the blank. Recovery has given me
life.
What's one word you'd use to describe your recovery journey?
Gratitude.
What's a daily habit or ritual that keeps you grounded?
Meditation.
If you find yourself struggling or triggered, what's the first thing you do?
Call my sponsor.
For real? For real?
For real.
Okay.
He won't say that, though.
You called your life coach first. This or that, morning routine or night routine?
Morning.
Meditation or movement?
Meditation.
Talking it out or writing it down?
Talking it out.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Name one book, song, movie, or TV show that's been meaningful to your recovery.
The Golden Girls.
Shut up. Shut your filthy gay mouth.
Yes.
Meaningful to your recovery. Why?
Just because of laughter. And just like they get to be themselves.
Yeah.
Like they're somehow always around. Like I think it's their song, right? Thank you for being a friend.
Yeah.
Travel down the road back again.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that whole thing, it's crazy. It's disgustingly gay.
It's very gay. It's also disgusting that they were considered golden in their early 50s.
Yes.
Like, calm down. Calm down. A piece of advice you return to when things get tough.
Be compassionate.
What's one phrase or mantra that keeps you going?
Keep coming back.
If someone hears your story today and takes one thing away from it, what do you hope it is?
That they can experience love. Yep.
Love. It's interesting. You didn't really talk about love throughout your story.
Yep. I'm still learning to love myself. And that's the hardest thing.
Okay.
Like there's still a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah.
You got to be able to love yourself before you can love anything else.
Shut up, RuPaul. Oh, Justin, thanks so much.
No, thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of The Speaker Meeting, breaking the silence one story at a time. A huge thank you to our guests today for sharing their journey with us. Recovery isn't easy, but conversations like this remind us that we're not alone and that change is possible. If you're struggling, know that there is help and there is hope. You don't have to do this alone. For immediate support, you can reach out to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. It's free, confidential, and available 24/7. And if you'd like to share your own story, I'd love to hear from you. You can submit your information at geminisproductions.com/thespeakermeeting. And if this conversation meant something to you, help us spread the word. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. The more we talk about recovery, the more we remind people that they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, recovery is real.